Okay, so let's get started. Good to see everybody. We are continuing in our conversation of making our tefillah, making our Shemona Esrei most meaningful, most impactful, most successful. And of course, nothing beats the obligation we have to just focus our attention on the words, on the Perush HaMilim, on what it is that we're saying and saying what we're meaning with vigor, with enthusiasm, with gusto. And that, of course, is the journey that we're on together. And we're going to continue this conversation specifically in the weekday Shemona Esrei, as we have been doing over these past many weeks. So wonderful to spend the Monday morning again together with all of you. And let's continue. So we're up to the 15th bracha. As you'll recall, last week when we were discussing the 14th bracha of the Yerushalayim, Binyan Yerushalayim, the building of Yerushalayim, the establishment of Yerushalayim, the eternal capital of Yerushalayim. So it dovetails into the 15th, the next bracha, which is Malchus Beis David. The Malchus Beis David, which is really the Davidic reign. And that, of course, the source of that, initially at least, is from what we read in Shavuos in the book of Rus, Megillus Rus, and she's the foremother of the Ima of David HaMelech, the Davidic reign. And this, of course, is very significant to the tefillah that comes before it, the tefillah of Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, eternal capital of the Jewish people forever and always. But there's something about Yerushalayim, and part of what we were davening for, as we learned last week, is that Yerushalayim as we have it today isn't the Yerushalayim that we know it can be, or the Yerushalayim that we know that it once was. Yerushalayim as we know it to be and what we hope it's going to be is going to be a rebuilt Yerushalayim, Binyan Yerushalayim, a rebuilt Yerushalayim. We discussed that there is the juxtaposing of ancient antiquity Yerushalayim and the modern new Yerushalayim, and the idea for which we continue to have this feeling and fervor and faith specific to Malchus Beis David, the Davidic reign. So it's very important to understand that relationship, because they are intrinsically and instinctively related, because Malchus David and the reign and the reestablishment and the reconsecrating of Yerushalayim, the building of Yerushalayim, is very much contingent on the Davidic reign, on Malchus Beis David, on Messianic Mashiach coming. And that's where we're going to focus our attention this morning. And we're going to have a very interesting ending, but let's have a very important beginning. So the 15th bracha begins as Tzemach David Avdecha Meheras Hatzmiach. And the tefillah begins with, we pray that Hashem should speedily cause the offspring of David HaMelech, of your servant David, Vikarno Tarum Yeshua Secha, to enhance his pride through the Yeshua, through the salvation. We hope for your salvation. When? We don't just hope for the salvation and the Messianic era to happen, to be heralded in just once a day or once in the morning or in the evening, but actually throughout the duration of the day. That's interesting when you think about, is there anything that anybody does that one does all day, literally all day? And one of the things that we're going to learn here is that which means we long for, we pray for, we hope for the salvation, is something that we're thinking about literally all day. It's similar to the blessing of the Torah that we say each morning, the Birchas Torah, La'asok b'divrei Torah. What does La'asok b'divrei Torah? It means I'm going to be engaged in Torah learning or Torah lifestyle throughout the duration of the day. If that wasn't the case, then every time we would go to the office, go to the bathroom, eat breakfast, do something that's trivial, mundane, something that's outside of the exercise of a spiritual pursuit, a spiritual gain, a spiritual activity, so we'd have an obligation anew to make a no birchas Torah. And the answer is, the reason why we don't is because la'asok b'divrei Torah means that it's all encompassing, it's all infusing, it's all relative to pretty much to everything that we're supposed to do. And there's not supposed to be a hiccup, a pause, or as we say, a hesach hadas, a causation of limitation specific to what I'm doing. That's the blessing of la'asok b'divrei Torah. So good. It's something l'shuascha kivinu kol hayom, baruch atah Hashem atzmiach keren Yeshua, blessed is Hashem who causes the keren. The keren means the pride of salvation to sprout. And that, of course, is Malchus Beis David. And here's what we're going to discuss this morning. And this is going to be something that, as I mentioned, the ending of this is going to be perhaps maybe where you thought I wasn't going to end the class this way, but we're going to do it. But at least to begin with, let's understand what really lie at the core, what's really the essence, the quintessential essence of this bracha, of this tefillah, is the obligation and the centrality of our emun, our belief in Mashiach. We have an obligation. We have it as central and fundamental and foundational as a principle of our faith, is to believe in Mashiach. And the reason why we know about it, obviously, is because, the sect of Hasidim, of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, who know and who have introduced and who have literally lived and committed themselves to we want Mashiach now. So it's plastered all over. It's part of the liturgy, the language. Of course, it's something that we all want, but it's even predates that, obviously. It's way before that. And that's where the core of that and the root of that is we're going to study the Rambam's central principles, the 13 principles of faith, what we call the Yud Gimel Ikrim, the 13 foundational principles for which our faith is predicated and stand and is maintained and is strengthened. And these are things that the 13 of which appear at the end of your most Sidurim, certainly in the back of the Art Scroll Siddur that we have in Shul, that most of you have even privately. And what the 13 principles of faith, when they're studied properly, as they're supposed to be read every day, so those are the yisodos, those are the foundations, these are the principles. That doesn't mean, I once had a conversation with an educator, a Jewish day school educator who was, pontificating about the need for a curriculum that was exclusively Chumash and Gemara. And obviously, you'll never get me to believe that a curriculum of Jewish scholastic enterprise should be without Torah study, including Gemara. Obviously, it should be very rigorous and very robust with milestones, goals, etc. But to not know faith principles, to not know the Yud Gimel Ikrim and what it is that we're supposed to believe, so we're bereft of some of the most important things that we have to know. And one of those things is the centrality of the belief in Mashiach. And so, of course, we're going to study that a little bit because that's what this tefillah is. This 15th bracha is the belief in Malchus Beis David, is the belief that Mashiach is going to come. But to say we want Mashiach now, and to and not to say this tefillah with kavana isn't in line, or to say this tefillah without saying, they're saying, I'm not so Mashiach, I'm not of the Mashiachus population of people, so that's also not correct. You have to know what you say and say what you mean. So the belief in the coming of Mashiach is one of the cornerstones of Yahadus. It's one of the cornerstones of Judaism because it expresses faith. It expresses our emunah that God has a plan for world history. That's one of the most important explanations of why, of the 13 principles. It's actually the 12th of the 13 principles. I've actually had a thought for quite some time to do a curriculum, a class on the 13 principles and go through and study them, which today we're going to study the 12th one, which is specific and related to this 15th blessing of the Shemona Esrei. But the reason why it's one of the cornerstones, the commentaries and the Mefarshim explain, is because it does express the faith that God has a plan for the world. When a person doesn't have a plan, when a person doesn't have a goal, they languish. They are not productive. There's actually cataclysmic decline. There's huge amount of machlokas, and one of the sources for where we know that that's true is in last week's parsha. What's last week's parsha is machlokas. Why was machlokas bred? How was machlokas bred? So you have to remember that after the previous parsha, in Parshas Shalach, that's when the Jewish people, the Meraglim came and they told the Jewish people that there's going to be the inability for us to conquer Eretz Yisrael. They spoke dibas ra'al ha'aretz. They spoke negatively about Eretz Yisrael. So what happened? They cried a bechiyah shel chinam. They cried mercilessly and unsolicited. And those are that's the source for why we have those nights of mourning, such as Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, the Beis HaMikdash, its destruction on the 9th of Av. That was the night that they mourned. So why is that so significant to the rebellion of Korach? Because that was the previous parsha. And the answer is that they had a goal. What was their goal? Their goal was to go to Eretz Yisrael. Now that they're not going to Eretz Yisrael, they had no goal. When you have no goal, so things are chaotic, things are wild. There's no organization. There's no destiny that seems to be visited upon you. Maybe they knew they're going to go to Eretz Yisrael 40 years from now, but that generation was going to die. It was going to be the children. It was chaos. What happens when there's chaos? So the Korach personality emerges. It's funny because I've been speaking to so many people, certainly now, where kids are out of school, but they're either pre-camp or not going to camp or no schedule, and families at vacation and travel, they're doing it less so, or maybe not yet, or if they're doing it very differently. And the huge amount of decision-making and chaos and uncertainty, and even in certain cases, machlokes, has oftentimes, what I believe, certainly now, been bred by just nobody knows what to do. There's no organization, there's no school, there's no camp, there's no structure, there's no goal, there's no destination. So that chaos equals sometimes machlokes, and certainly a great sense of unsettled. So that's what the idea, first commentary, is that one of the cornerstones of this being of bedrock of our faith really expresses the fact that Hashem has a plan, that there's a haskalah, there's a sefer, there's a beginning, that there's an end, there's a continuation, and the Messianic era is the place that we're hoping to get to. Actually, if you take the word Mashiach, how do you spell the word Mashiach? Mem, Shin, Yud, Ches. So if you take that word and you rearrange the letters, right? Ches, Yud, Shin, Mem. What does that spell? Chai, Sham. to live there. So there's something called a goal that is meant for us to get to, for us to be committed to all of our days to try to achieve a destination. There's a plan for the world. And that's what the Rambam writes in the 13 Principles of Faith, which is the 12th one, which expresses this, a personal creed, belief in the coming Mashiach, means that a person's going to wait his imminent arrival. Ani mamin be'emuna shalema bevias HaMashiach ve'afal pishis mameya im kol zeh achakelo b'chol yom sheyava. I believe with complete faith in the coming of the Mashiach. In fact, I verbalize this. I say this, not just as a wordplay, but actually something I believe in, even if it is, this is a very important part, even though he may delay, even though it might be, seemingly to my calculation, computation, be taking some time, nonetheless, im kol zeh, nonetheless, I anticipate, chakilo, when? Not someday in the future, someday down the pike, some month down the road, when things settle, when I retire, when things work out. No, so what does it mean? Im kol zeh achakilo, b'chol yom she'yavo. Every day I believe that he's gonna come. I wake up every morning and I look out my window and I anticipate and hope for his arrival. Now the best mushal I ever heard to that, best parable to that, actually Jen told it to me many years ago. Because you think about that, like, does anybody really like go to their window, or does that really ever happen? You're looking out your window, did Mashiach come? Like, do we ever experience that? Do we ever do that? Do we ever like look, anxiously out the window to see if something's happening? So I was having this conversation once as we were coming back from a flight from New York back to Florida. Jen and I were having this conversation. We're standing by the baggage claim. So by the baggage claim, it's like an amazing like little muscle. By the baggage claim, you're waiting for your bags. So like you're waiting there and the conveyor belt doesn't start yet, and you're like standing there like impatiently. You're happy that you're at the destination. If you're on vacation, if you're coming home, you're happy to be there. You're just like now waiting for the last leg, your bags to come out, throw them in the car, get to where you need to go. So you wait for the conveyor belt to start. And then you hear like some type of beeping, the light shines, flashes, and then the conveyor belt goes. And what happens? So first of all, you've like put yourself in position, right? Everybody knows that position. Either you're standing by the beginning of that conveyor belt, so you can, be the first one to grab your bag, because Chalila v'chas, God forbid, you should wait as the bag goes, down, rotates around, if I go around twice, so even if you're not at the beginning, you're somewhere. So what are you doing? You're literally craning your head. You're looking, you're craning. Is that my bag? Is that my bag? Is that my bag? You're craning. So John said to me, you see that craning? You see that looking? You see that anticipating? You're looking to see what's going to come out? So that's how we're supposed to be looking out to see if Mashiach is coming, to see if Messianic days have come. We're like craning, we're looking. And when there isn't that, we're not waiting for that, because we can't get to our next destination. We can't go to where we're staying without our luggage, right? We can't get into the car with our belongings unless you have your stuff. In fact, if you've ever lost a bag at an airport, which I have not once and not twice, it's annoying. Not only annoying because you can't get your bag, but it delays your trip, and you've got to stick around, and you got to fill out some paperwork, and you got to take your numbers, and maybe you kept the sticker, maybe you didn't keep the sticker, maybe you lost your bag, So it's annoying. It takes your journey and puts it on pause. Somebody wants that. So if we look at Mashiach as the same thing. We're craning our neck. We're looking, and our bags not coming pauses our trip, and Mashiach not coming pauses our trip. It delays our destiny. So that's troublesome. I'm unsettled. I get to my vacation, and meanwhile, the first 6 hours of my vacation, I'm on the airport. I'm on the phone with the airport, on the airline, wondering, did the bags come? I was on a different flight, and somebody took my bag. You know the drill. If you've ever experienced it, it's awful. It's terrible. So the idea is that's a good mashal. That's a good parable. That's a good comparison. I'm looking. I'm craning my neck. I'm anticipating. I'm looking. I know it's like you can appreciate that. The idea of just looking for your bags. So it's like the same physical expression of an emotional expression of trying to look. And of course, that statement of the Rambam that we utter every single day is also highlighted very dramatically, as the Gemara famously tells them, Masechah Shabbos, which we had, some time ago in the Daf Yomi, and Daf Lamed Aleph on folio 31a, where the Gemara tells us outright, explicitly, straight out, that there are a number of questions that a person is going to be asked after 120, after a person goes on to the next world. What are those questions? And there's a list of them. So one of the questions that's asked, the Gemara says, Amar Rava b'shashem achnisin adam ladin. The person comes to din v'cheshbon, the person comes to judgment in the next world, they're asked among a series of questions. So Amrimlo, they say to them, ministering heavenly celestial angels say to the person, Tzipisa Yeshua, did you hope for salvation? Did you anticipate? Did you crane your neck? Were your bags packed? Somebody once came to tell the story of the Chofetz Chaim. Somebody came to visit the Chofetz Chaim, and they saw that he was living in very meager, humble, accommodations. His house wasn't like, this fancy place. And they said, the Chofetz Chaim, this big rabbi, you're living in such a way. He says, I'm traveling. You're traveling? I didn't hear. He says that everybody's traveling in this world. It's considered like an antechamber. It's the antechamber to the major banquet hall. So we're all traveling, and there's a certain sense of that anticipation. I remember I gave a Shabbos Hagadol Drasha. I'm sure maybe some of you, Linda, I'm sure you remember Shabbos Hagadol Drasha many years ago. It was actually in the previous building. It was actually a long time ago. And it was about Mashiach and anticipating it. It was a long time ago. And I remember one of our esteemed members confessed to me many, many months later, because I think the punchline of my drasha is we should be doing something. I had a chavrusa many years ago who had a bag, like a suitcase that he never unpacked fully. It was always available for the Mashiach, the chance of when Mashiach is going to come or he's going to be ready to go. So he confessed to me many months later after the drasha that his Mashiach bag is ready by the door. And I was like so inspired by that. I still look at that person that same way. Or when I spoke for the OU a number of months ago in the daily dose of inspiration I shared, there was the joint communal BRS, Boca Jewish Center community pre-Pesach Haggadah learnings. I shared the story of my daughter's roommate who had a dress, who called it her Mashiach dress in her closet. I don't know if you remember that her Mashiach dress is ready. Nobody can touch that dress. Nobody can borrow that dress because when Mashiach comes, she needs to have a dress that's ready. So that's what the Gemara is saying. Did you hope for salvation? It's Tzipisa Yeshua. Did you anticipate it? Was your day consumed by it? Did you, every day you knew it was going to come. Every day you waited for it to come. You were ready for it to come. And you should know that this is something that there's different nuschos, there's different nusach for davening, as of course we're all familiar, but the nusach Edus HaMizrach and nusach Sfard, so the Kaddish that's recited every day contains a prayer for Mashiach, We're familiar with what's said, Yiskada v'Yiskada Shmei Rabba, Be'alma divrei Cherusei, etc. Be'hamlich Malchusei. Now what do the Sfardim say? What's nusach Edus HaMizrach Sfard? V'yatzmach Parkonei, what does it say? V'yatzmach Parkonei v'Karev Mishichei. What does that mean? That they add those four words, right? That the salvation should blossom and he should bring the anointed one. He should be Mashiach, the anointed one, which literally means Mashiach. Mashiach, literally the word means anointed. So the anointed one, the Davidic destiny, heirloom, the descendant of David HaMelech should be anointed. So it's not just that it's a question that's asked, it's part of the fact that it should be that we say it, but that's why they added. Everybody sometimes wonders, like, why does it? So many people feel that that's a good daily reminder. It's part of the Nusach HaTfilah. That's why it's said. That's why they're very scrupulous and very, very careful. Okay, that's kind of just by way of introduction. But let's delve a little bit and drill a little bit deeper. So the Rambam's, the explanation of the Rambam's principle of an imam in B'amunah Shleim B'Vias HaMashiach, the belief in the coming of the Mashiach is one of the 13 principles of faith. I would say that by way of explanation, the Rambam explains that I really say it's broken up into like really 4 categories. So what are the 4 categories? The first is that the 12th principle is the time of the Mashiach. This means that we believe and that we are certain that he will come. It doesn't mean that we believe he's going to be late in coming. It means that if he tarries, as we said, he's surely going to come. He's not going to come late. There's no such thing. Like, for example, when you hear that a woman is expecting, what do we say? You don't say Mazel Tov. You say B'shat Tova. What's B'shat Tova? B'shat Tova is it should come in the right time. It should come when the baby's supposed to come. That's why, for some people, the idea of a due date is very confusing, right? Why? Because if the due date is December 1st, for example, so if the baby comes on November 25th, so then the baby was early. If the baby comes on December 5th, then the baby was late. Babies don't come early and the babies don't come late. Babies come when they come. That's B'shat Tova. The B'shat Tova means that I believe there's no late wait, there's no late, there's no early. It's like we're very used to thinking, the Yom Tov, you've heard this before. Yontif is late this year. Tisha B'Av, it's late this year. Yontif is actually not late or early ever. It's the same time always. Now, of course, when compared to the Gregorian calendar, that's really what we're saying. So if Yom Kippur this year is in October, it's late. right? If Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of September, so it's nice, it's early, maybe, right? So we determine it, but the reality is, Tishrei, Aleph Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei Yud is Yom Kippur, 9th of Av is 9th of Av. It's not early, it's not late, it's the same time every single year. That's number one. The second thing is that it's actually, we're going to delve into this also a little bit more, is you shouldn't set a set time for him, which is something very dangerous about setting a set time, right? You shouldn't make calculations. In fact, the Gemara, I'm learning one of the Gemaras I'm learning with my son, Shimshi, currently, the Gemara Maseches Megillah says that when darshaning the various kings, Cyrus and Darius and Achashverosh, so they made big mistakes in their calculation. They thought that the Jews, with Yirmiyahu's prophecy, was going to be 70 years, and after that 70 years, the Jews are going to go free. Once they calculated the 7 years and the Jews didn't go free, so then it was time for them to, use the plundered Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash for the banquet, for which they were punished, of course, as we all know. So what was wrong? They made their calculations wrong. So something very dangerous about a calculation. So you shouldn't make calculations, and you shouldn't say, why? Because if you made a calculation, Mashiach is coming here at this time, and Mashiach didn't come, so then, okay, you despair that he's ever going to come. In fact, we know that one of the reasons why Parshas Vayechi is a stuma, it's a parsha that's closed, is because Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to his children when Ketz Hayamin, when the days of Messianic revelation are going to happen, and it doesn't happen because to have a set date, right? So that set date maybe would have created a certain sense of despair. That's number two. Number three is that the foundation here of this faith includes to believe in him, to magnify his greatness, to love him, to pray that he's going to come. As was all prophesied, by the way, by all the Nevi'im, by all the prophets, including Moshe Rabbeinu, right? The Malachim spoke about it. They spoke how we're supposed to have love for him. This person's going to be a great person, and we have to daven for him to come. And finally, a person who doubts this, or a person who minimizes his greatness, so denies that the Torah testifies explicitly to the coming of Mashiach. By the way, we have this in Parshas Nitzavim. Parshas Nitzavim, Perek Lamed, Pasuk Gimel, chapter 30, verse number 3. V'shav Hashem Elokecha es shavuscha v'richamecha v'shav v'kitzpecha mikol ha'amim asher hafitzecha Hashem Elokecha shama, which literally means that Hashem, your God, will bring back your captivity and have mercy upon you, and he will gather you in from all the peoples to which Hashem, your God, has scattered you. This is a Torah source for that. Parshat Nitzavim, Perek Lamed, Pasuk Gimel through Hey, 30, chapter 30, verses 3 through 5. So including this principle that the Jewish people will have only a king from Beis David and from the offspring of Shlomo Melech. Like that's our belief. So to say, somebody says, oh, give me the biblical source. What's the biblical source? Biblical source, you have a source. In Parshas Nitzavim, it's Sefer Devarim, Deuteronomy 30, verses 3 through 5. So you'd be denying the prophets, Moshe Rabbeinu. You would be denying the Torah itself. Okay, so those are the 4 main points. But further, the Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim, and by the way, the laws of Hilchos Malachim, the laws of kings, is actually the noted study that describes and discusses all these Messianic Mashiach-related laws, and it's worthwhile to go through them. They're very fascinating. So the Rambam says in the 11th chapter, Halacha Al Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Halacha Aleph, that's so central to Judaism's belief is the coming of Mashiach, that one who denies it or doesn't wait for his arrival is considered to have denied the entire Torah. Listen to this. This is what the Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim. Anybody who does not believe in it, and by the way, all these sources, I know we're zipping along a little fast, but if anybody needs to slow down, please just put that in the comment box, or I can certainly share these sources with you afterwards. But these are sources that we could delve into literally for hours and hours. Just what does the Rambam mean when he says this, and how does he say it? What's the language? Then anybody who does not believe in Mashiach, or anybody who does not wait for his arrival. So listen to this. This is the Rambam. This is Maimonides. This isn't like your local Yokel Dokel, who you pick up a recently written book from the local Judaica's bookstore. This is Maimonides, the Rambam, in his great wisdom, speaking about the Ribbon Shalom B'chvodo V'atzmo Lo Bishar Neviim Bilvad Hu Kofer. It's not just that the fact that he doesn't anticipate his arrival, that he doesn't believe in Mashiach, it's not only does he deny the validity of Nevi'im, of the prophets, right? Because that's what Moshe Rabbeinu prophesied. That's this, right? This is Parshat Nitzavim. We're talking about the Nevi'im all the way through Malachi. They prophesied that Mashiach is coming, right? All Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel, Yeshayahu. I mean, we're talking about denying the prophets of enormous magnitude. Lo b'shar Nevi'im bilvad hu kofer. It's not just that the prophets are the ones that he's denying. Ela b'Torah uva Moshe Rabbeinu, but he's also, you should know, denying the Torah itself, and he's denying Moshe Rabbeinu, the prophet of all prophets. He's denying the Torah itself. So this is so central, so critical, so fundamental, that we have to really, really understand. It's about a pathway, it's about our prophets, it's about the Torah, and it's really understanding that it's every single day, even if he delays, it's not something we believe. We don't have a set time, because obviously having a set time would breed a certain sense of disappointment. That's what Rambam says, so central is this theme. So I guess part of that really, again, then we begin to wonder is, why should someone who rejects the concept of Mashiach be viewed as denying the validity of Judaism? It's like a very strong statement. Like, if I'm going to anticipate a Sid question, a good Sid question, I got to be on my toes for Sid's good questions, is why should someone who rejects the concept of Mashiach it's a pretty strong, it's pretty severe. Stark to say that person is viewed as denying the validity of Judaism, the validity of Torah. It's very strong. So why is it so important to always be waiting for Mashiach? So I found a beautiful excerpt, and I think this is very, very important. It's a book that was written by Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, is that so? And the name of it is Fundamentals in Faith. It's a very important book to have. I recommend it to a good number of people because it really gives you like fundamentals, like really right there. So he explains, and I'm just going to I took two very important excerpts, and really the highlight is that without Mashiach, life is not complete. Here are the two probably most important paragraphs of the entire class this morning, because again, it's about denying Judaism, the essence of Judaism. And this is why it's so important to wait for him and to anticipate that. We have like no other mitzvah in the Torah that we wait for it. Like it's like, and I put my talis and tefillin on every morning. I don't like get there and like wait. Maybe I should, but I don't get there and I don't like wait to, when the time comes, I put my talis on, I put my tefillin on. I don't like stare at it. I look at my sukkah, I look at my esrog, I look at my mezuzah, I put on my tzitzis. Like, no, I do the mitzvah when the mitzvah comes. It's not like I anticipate it, wait for it to happen. Now, obviously, Mashiach is not a mitzvah, but there's a mitzvah, or there's a concept of waiting for it. So what's the explanation? Why is that? So Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg writes in Fundamentals of Faith, 2 paragraphs, so important. Here we go. Ready? He says like this, and these, if you want me to share with you any of these sources again, I will, and certainly this one. Perhaps, he says, perhaps here he warns against minimizing the Mashiach's importance. You see, part of the problem is that if you don't anticipate it, you don't want it, you don't wait for it, is you don't realize how important it is, right? If you have someone special that you're picking up from the airport, you realize how important that person is. You might not necessarily send an Uber or send a taxi. You're going to go yourself because that person is very, very important. It would seem then that awaiting him, he writes, should be understood as attributing to him so much importance that one is aware of missing something, of lacking something every moment of one's life. Imagine like you're missing something. It's so essential. It's so necessary to your own life. So now that you're missing it, it's like you're unsettled. It's not enough to know and believe that he is coming. That's what he says. But a person has to also feel and understand what it means not to have him in our world. It's not just, I want him. But what does it mean that I don't have him? What are the realities and what it means that I don't have him? It's like the Chavetz Chaim. I was learning with my boys this morning, Shmiras Halashon, the laws of proper talk. There's a mitzvah of limud Torah, and if a person doesn't learn Torah, there's a violation. There's a bittul Torah. There's a lav, a losaseh of being mevatel Torah. So when you use the time that you should have otherwise been spent learning Torah, speaking Lashon Hara, so you've done two things. Not only have you not learned Torah and created in the world bittul Torah, but now you've said something negative. There's like a vacuum that fills that sacred spot that you should have spoken Torah, but now you've spoken in a deploratory way, deprecating, in a negative way, to fill that space where you could have spoken positive, and now you're speaking negative about something. So it's a double doozy. So it's not just that you're waiting for him, Mashiach, to come, but it's also, and to believe that he's coming, but it's also understand what it means not to have him. So what does it mean not to have him? Like, how can you know what it means not to have him if we never had him? So this is what he explains in the second paragraph, a very important point. A world without Mashiach is a world of exile. He says it's a very important point. Like when we're waiting for Mashiach to come, we're waiting for our exile to end. We're waiting for Golus, which is bitter, which is a punishment. We were sent into exile because we were punished. Now, I don't think that it's ever that productive to focus on the negativities and the punishment, even though there's schar and onesh, reward and punishment. But we can't ever fail to remember that exile is, in fact, punishment. So where Jews find themselves dispersed among many nations, like that's not how we want it to be. We don't want it to be like, what do we say when we bless the new month? Birchas HaChodesh, Chaverim It should be a kaptzenu me'arba kanfos. People should be gathered from Dalet kanfos arts, from the 4 sections, places, directions of the world. So we don't want everybody to be so far away from each other. So it's a world where even in the land of Israel and in Eretz Yisrael, Jews are subjected to the whims and the values of other nations, right? Even in Eretz Yisrael. I remember when I got off, I think I've told this before, when I got off my Nefesh B'Nefesh flight in 2005, when we made Aliyah, which was like one of the highlights of our lives. So a news reporter was there. Again, that's not like the smartest thing to, need to get an interview, a testimonial of somebody who just flew 12 hours with kids and bags, and we were exhausted. So he said, tell us, how does it feel to be out of the exile? The cameraman, training the camera on my face and my wife's face. We were exhausted, long flight. How does it feel? He puts a microphone on my face. Jen and I said, we can't wait to live here. We love Eretz Yisrael, but unless something happened on the plane that I didn't know about, I think we're still in exile. I think we're still in Gullus. I don't think that was the report that this guy was looking for. I don't think it aired on I-24 News, but suffice it to say, that's like the truth. Like, even though Eretz Yisrael, it's ikvasud de Mashiach, it's haschala de Mashiach, that there's what we have today is like unbelievable. Like, we couldn't be more grateful to the Ribbon Shalom. And for sure, as we discussed last time, said you rightly said, is that all these things are happening right before our very eyes, right? And it's all certainly to deny it as part of the story would be to be denying, something very true. But at the same time, we know subjugated to the whims and the values of other nations. So he adds further, it is a world in which terrible barriers created by spiritual apathy deter man from coming close to Hashem, and where the opportunities to approach him and the experience his presence in his temple are gone. Like, we don't have the ability to approach him and to feel him and to draw close to him the way we need to, the way we once able to. So once one appreciates that the meaning of life is determined by how close one comes to the Creator, to Hashem, so the loss of his presence becomes an acute, intolerable pain. It eats away at a person's spiritual core. A person can only be anesthetized by distracting oneself through all kinds of self-delusionary pleasures, right? That's what a person does. We've got all these pleasures, all these gadgets, all these gizmos, all these pleasures, which are self-delusionary. I know some of you remember the course I gave, 5-part series I gave on happiness, the Jewish pursuit of happiness. Tal Ben Shachar, the most popular class at Harvard University, the class on happiness, the psychological study of of happiness, the most highly attended, enrolled class in university history. But why? Because people are thirsty for it. They want pleasure. So there's delusionary pleasure that people anesthetize themselves to. Is because why? They're distracted. They feel that there's an intolerable acute pain. So doing so, mankind has become callous to in a sense, has become dull to the ultimate pleasure, which is his relationship with Hashem, which is the relationship that's offered when there's Shechina, when there's Beis Hamikdash, when there's divine, when there's Mashiach days. It's going to reinstitute Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so that's what he writes. 2 very important paragraphs from Yaakov Weinberg: fundamentals and faith. As a continuation of this is that the Rambam also writes in the introduction to the 10th chapter in Maseches Sanhedrin, is that what we're really looking for actually is a time when all these impediments, when all of these things that distract and prevent us from ultimately close to Hashem, so they're going to be removed. That's what he says. He says, we're not longing for and hoping for the days of Mashiach because of an increase in productivity. And it's not that we're longing for and hoping for the days of Mashiach because we want that there's going to be more wealth that's going to occur. Or we can ride susim, horses, and drink wine, to the accompaniment of song. Some people think like Mashiach is going to be like this. I don't even know. Like that's how the Rambam describes it. This person's gonna ride horses, drink music, wine. There's gonna be timbrel and trumpet. There's gonna be all type of music. People are gonna be confused. These are confused. No, he says, you know what it is? It's something completely and utterly different. You should know that the prophets, the Nevi'im, the pious ones, they looked forward to the days of the Mashiach Messianic era, and they yearned for them. Why? Because it was then that the righteous will be gathered together in fellowship. There's going to be chavrusas, there's going to be chavrashaft, there's going to be a fellowship, an achdus, a reus. It's going to happen because goodness and wisdom will prevail. It's going to be so desired to people, says the Rambam, because we're going to have this ability to now no longer be distant from Hashem. As close as the closest person feels to Hashem now, it's not comparable to what's going to happen when we have a Beis HaMikdash. It's not that dissimilar to what people say, what the Chazal tells people. Chazal say that, we think about the ultimate redemption and Exodus and Golus and Geula is the story of Golus and Geulas Mitzrayim, our redemption from Egypt. But Chazal tell us that when we are redeemed with the Messianic era, it's going to make the Golus Mitzrayim, it's not going to be something we're even going to necessarily talk about. We're not even going to focus our attention on that. Imagine, Zeicher Yetzias Mitzrayim, twice a day, in the morning, in the evening, before I go to sleep, Kiddush Friday night, on Rosh Hashanah, and on Sukkot, and on Pesach, and on Shavuos. I mean, Zeicher Yetzias Mitzrayim is so major. We say Zeich Yetzias Mitzrayim every single day as part of the Sheish Zichronos. It's going to pale. It's going to be insignificant. So that means any close relationship that the closest person has with the Rebbeinu Shalom, it's not even measured as a closeness compared to what will be. So that's part of what the Rambam says. It's a longing that the Nevi'im, that the prophets, that the Hasidim, that the pious ones, they look forward to. Because now they're going to be gathered in Reus, they're going to be gathered in friendship, but it's also going to now be so desired. You know why? Because now there's a nearness, there's a dvekus, there's a closeness to the Almighty that now is available, which wasn't available. And that's what it is now. And that's going to be, further, as he says, is that Sheyamud HaMelech Mashiach be'emes. You know what's going to happen? When he comes and he succeeds, Mashiach comes, he's going to be elevated, he's going to be exalted. So everybody's going to now know be'emes. Everyone's going to know truth. They're going to know what was false and what is true. And they're going to and they're going to think where even the nations of the world, the Rambam says, the nations of the world are going to think about how their own leaders, their own prophets misled them. I think one of the things that we're lacking today is what's the truth? What are we supposed to do? What's the emes? What's the truth? And there's so much sheker, there's so much falsehood, there's so much lack of information that's truthful. We don't even know, you read the news, you don't even know what you're reading. You don't even know what to do. CDC says this, ABC says that, XQ, XYZ says this. I don't even know what's emes? What's the truth? What's the truth? So Mashiach also says the Rambam, not only is it going to be a dvekus, but there's going to be truth. Because when the Almighty comes in that type of dense revelation, so there's going to be not just truth, but absolute truth. Everybody has their truth. Everybody believes what they believe. Okay, social distancing matters, mask doesn't matter, they don't matter. And if you do this and you wash your groceries and you stand this amount of feet apart and you do that, whatever things they say, whatever it is, so there's going to be something called absolute truth. So that's what's going to be revealed. Okay, so one more primary source, and then the ending that I don't think that you thought I would end with, and then of course we'll open it up to questions after a very quick review. So of course, then the ultimate question is, if this is the theme of the tefillah, this is the theme of this segment of this paragraph. So the question is, when will he come? When's he going to come? How many Tisha B'Av videos have we watched? Shmiras HaLashon, we have to be careful with what we say. With Shmiras HaMitzvos, of course, that's the answer. But I just want to share with you one source that I think kind of sums it up really, very succinctly. And that's the Chofetz Chaim by Yisrael Meir Kagan HaKohen from Radin, Chofetz Chaim, who writes in Shmiras HaLashon in the second chapter, in the second book rather, in the seventh chapter, he says that Mashiach is only going to come again. I'm just summarizing this. Peace in our communities when we eradicate two things: baseless hatred, sinas chinam, and speaking derogatory about other people. And he quotes, "V'hinei kosva b'sfarim b'shem Hazar HaKadosh debei knishta chada im hayesh shomer midas hashalom yicholim l'zachos l'bias HaMashiach." He says, he quotes the Zohar HaKadosh that even if one shul, one community, one congregation that maintains peace properly, right, that has shalom, so they can be zoche to merit Mashiach to come. And so therefore, what we understand, in Cain, he writes, bias HaMashiach teluya biyadeinu. Everybody knows the words biyadeinu, harabayis biyadeinu, harabayis motagor, but harabayis biyadeinu, harabayis biyadeinu. But there's another biyadeinu. In Cain, says the Chofetz Chaim, in Cain, bias HaMashiach teluya biyadeinu. And so therefore, we understand the coming of the Mashiach, the Messianic present, it is dependent on us and us alone, as he says. And so therefore, it is known that preserving peace can only be accomplished, again, creating peace, but then there's creating peace, and then there's preserving the peace. How do you keep the peace, right? Let's keep the peace. Right now, the world is so chaotic. We can't even keep the peace. We can't keep the peace in the streets. There's riotings in New York, there's shootings. It's things are seemingly out of control. It's known that preserving the peace, as the Chofetz Chaim, can only happen if we're careful in avoiding both baseless hatred and speaking derogatorily about one another. If you speak negative about somebody, speak behind their back, you speak in a deprecating way. So obviously there's no peace, there's no hatred, there's baseless hatred that's bred. See, so every person, each individual person who wants to rectify, wants to remedy the shortcomings, will have a share in the building of the future of the Beis Hamikdash. But without this, he says, that person will have yelo chelik b'beis habenuya la'asid. I can't even read this, very, very hard source to say. That he says, though, if God forbid a person doesn't try or endeavor, or engage in the efforts it's going to rebuild it, chas v'shalom, something could remain destroyed forever, chas v'shalom, God forbid. Very, very difficult. So it's difficult if we don't do it, but it's awesome if we do it. We don't speak lashon hara. We don't gain. When you speak negatively about somebody behind their back, that person, they don't even know about it, and it just brings you down. It even just introduces to you just all this negativity, these terrible thoughts, and it doesn't hurt that person to use that. So it's better to just avoid it when and if possible. I know it's easier said than done, but obviously, if we can, we should. Okay, those are just 9 main sources that I went through. Just read through them quickly, just topically. The main idea of that, the centrality of its being our faith, the cornerstone, is because there's a plan. We daven that it should be not just every day, but every day, like any point of every day. It's a question that's asked us after 120 years. It's the piece of the Yeshua. It's the nusach of the Kaddish of nusach Edus HaMizrach and nusach Svar v'yatzmach pekoni v'karim v'shichei. The 4 points that I mentioned, that even if he tarries, I'm away from him. There's no such thing as him being late. You shouldn't set aside time for him because he make calculations. You shouldn't despair if that's what it is. We have an obligation to magnify his greatness, to love him, to pray for him, that pray that he's going to come. A person who doubts his coming, minimizes his greatness, denies not only the Nevi'im, denies the Torah, because it says in Parashat Nitzavim specifically, explicitly. Why should this be the case? Remember the 2 points where Yaakov Weinberg says in Foundations, Fundamentals, and Faith, that awaiting him attributes so much to maybe failing to appreciate him. We don't necessarily give importance to what it means. We're lacking something in a person's life. It's not enough to believe he's coming, but to feel and to understand what it means not to have him in our world. A life in a world without Mashiach is a world of exile, dispersed even in Eretz Yisrael. That's what it is. There's a certain spiritual apathy. There's an inability for us to connect to him. Even today, as great and as close as a person feels without the Beis Hamikdash, without the temple, it's not possible. And what happens with an acute and tolerable pain, a person has to anesthetize themselves with certain self-delusionary pleasures, and a person's senses become dull, which is dulling the ultimate pleasure, which is the relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam. And part of what the Rambam also told us by way of addition to this is that we're yearning for that closeness. It's not going to be drinking wine, riding horses, you're listening to music like that. It's for the pious ones, the prophets, that brings a yearning, a closeness, and then there's going to be an emes, a truth that we're craving, we're lacking in this world. What's the truth? We're going to have the truth. It's not just going to be a truth, but it's going to be the absolute truth. When is he going to come? So he's going to come noting that it's dependent on us, and even if it's one kehila chada, even if it's one community that allows it to happen, it's good. It's going to happen to us when we stop speaking lashon hara, when we are not engaged in baseless hatred, but avas chinam and good positive talk and closeness and relationships. So then it's going to be hopefully something we know, we trust, we believe. And Imam and Be'emunah Shalem Mashiach will come imminently. And that day, as we hope and as we pray. So that's the first 9 points that I wanted to make. One final thought, which is the ending, which I don't know if you would think I would end with, but I'm going to end with it anyway, because I just think I can't give this lesson without adding this point, and then we'll open up to any questions. And that is, I also have to quote the Rambam in Hilchas Malachim in chapter 12, chapter 12, Halacha Beis, Halacha 2, and that is, there is a danger, and I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek a little bit. I'm not saying it embarrassed or cowardly. I'm saying this proudly because it's a Rambam. And when the Rambam says it, it's a Rambam, okay? And I'm not certainly, God forbid, indicting anybody. That would go against what I'm even trying to teach this morning. But I think it's very important to remember what the Rambam says is that a person should not get overly involved in the details of Mashiach, right? It shouldn't be the main focus of a person's spiritual development. And listen to the Rambam says, Olam lo yisasik adam b'divrei ha'hagados v'lo yarech b'midrashos ha'mamarim b'inyanenu ki yotze b'zeh. A person should not ever involve themselves with these inyanim of Mashiach, or the words of the Medrash about Mashiach, and speak about this topic so much so v'lo yisimam ikar. Why? You should make them the prime focus of your faith. They don't bring about Yiras Hashem. They don't bring a person to have faith, fear of God, right? Because unfortunately what happens for some is it can become like their faith. It's like that's their religion, all right? We want Mashiach now. Now, most people I know that are in a certain movement that do that are not that way. So I want to be very clear and strong about that. But anybody, whether you're in a certain orientation of people or otherwise, so you don't want to make any one thing, like that's not how it's supposed to be. It's fundamental. It's paramount. It's significant. You don't want to calculate the end of days of Mashiach's arrival. We've had many times in history. Shabtai Tzvi, for example, proclaimed himself as Mashiach. Somebody proclaims somebody as Mashiach, and they're not. I mean, it becomes a form of idolatry. That's obviously not what we believe in. Rather, what we're supposed to say, Ela Yechake v'Yamin bichlal hadavar kamo sheyibarnu. Person has to wait for him, have to believe in the general principle. We explained it now, very detailed. You yearn for it, you want it, you're looking out your window, but you're not, God forbid, worshiping that ideology. You're worshiping the Ribono Shalom. You're performing the 613 mitzvos, not to the exclusion one over another, but all of them faithfully, steadfast, committed, without compromise. And one of them, of course, is this idea of how the tefillah begins, is that we should hope for as Tzemach David Avdecha Mehera Satzmiach. We pray that you, Hashem, should speedily cause the offspring of your servant, of your descendant David, to sprout. There should be the sprouting, the pride, the salvation that comes. That's something we pray for every single day, 3 times a day, something we yearn for. And without that perspective, God forbid, a person could be really, missing the boat. And unfortunately, many people that even under the auspices of religious observance, they miss the boat. They worship things other than what things they're supposed to worship. Okay, so that's when I say that's the ending that maybe you didn't anticipate. It's not because it's not a major and important topic. It is. It's a very important source, but it's like keep things in check, keep things the right way, do it the way the Torah expects us to do this. I remember with this. I'll really conclude this section. I remember this guy who I met along my journeys when I was living in Eretz Yisrael, and he loved Baal Tshuva fellow. He loved Shabbos so much. He said, "Rabbi, I'm keeping Shabbos till Tuesday." I'm like, "That's nice. That's great. Beautiful." I knew what he was saying. He was saying he loves Shabbos, doesn't want it to end. But then I started to sense that the guy's serious. He's not going to make Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, and Sunday he's going to keep it. Then I'm like, buddy, listen, I love you. You're great. You're wonderful. We don't keep Shabbos till Tuesday. We keep Shabbos until Motzei Shabbos. That's what it is. You know why? Because you don't have to be firmer than the Torah. You don't have to be firmer than God. That's how it was, is, and how it's supposed to be. So that is here today's presentation of this very important tefillah. And with that, I open up the floor to any and to all questions, commentaries, concerns, worries related to this topic or otherwise.